What does it take to make a full season of a paranormal podcast? When that paranormal podcast goes on the road, do they see ghosts? Will there be a season 2? Find out the answers to these questions and more as we wrap up the first season of Haunted Atlas.
I'm Erica.
And I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brandon, founder of Haunted US, and this is the Haunted Atlas, a Haunted US podcast. So you might notice something's a little different tonight. We are actually recording a bit of a wrap-up episode for everyone. We have just finished recording our first season of Haunted Atlas, and we wanted to reflect on some of the things that happened during the season. We wanted to talk about some of our favorites from the season and really give you guys a little bit more of a view behind the curtain of what it takes to make one of these, and have the team talk about what might be next. So, Sarah, Erica, we made it through a full season. What do you think? How did it go?
It was really great, honestly. I had such a fun time. I think the way that we do the episodes, just, recording the episodes alone is so fun. And then getting to hear the end product is amazing. Because, you never really expect, even though we're recording it, you never really expect, exactly what it's going to sound like. And I kind of love that.
I was really excited to join the Haunted US team, and I think part of what made this podcast so well-rounded is the fact that we did have a whole team behind us. We had researchers, editors, photographers, you as our executive producer, and I think that really helped us create quality content focused on the facts.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's been fantastic to support you guys and support the show as it's been moving forward. It's so important to maintain the stories of these places and share them. And I think you guys have done such an incredible job this season doing exactly that. I would ask you, of the locations that you did cover this year, do you have any favorites?
Mine is hands down the Winchester House. And I think what I liked the most about it is spooky. It's really well known. But there was so much debate in that episode over, was it truly haunted? Was this just, local legend, etc.? So I think the fact that we were really able to debate the paranormal activity and dive into such an important landmark made it my favorite.
So I think my favorite would be Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, which is the second lighthouse that we covered in the season. For me, that was one of the coolest because when you look at pictures of it, it's almost like it's the essence of what you expect from the paranormal, right? It's next to a body of water and, the ocean and all of its uncertainty is kind of spooky and scary. And I think looking at that lighthouse in pictures, you almost get the sense that there's eerie vibes there. And I just really liked the history of it and the story. It was really cool.
I love that. And I think that you guys picked two of the most quintessential haunts, right? You picked a haunted mansion that has such mystery layered around it and a lighthouse in the graveyard of the Atlantic, incredible choices. Follow-up question. Debate amongst yourselves, which of the two would you rather spend the night in?
Mine's the Winchester House. Rather than an old lighthouse.
And I think here's the thing. The Winchester House to me is scarier for the fact that I have no sense of direction. So if I was trying to find my way through this house and by myself and opening doors that had walls and trying to get upstairs that led nowhere, that would really freak me out. But because of how complex the story is, I think I would want to stay there too.
Yeah, I think one, like I said, from just the actual state of things, I would rather spend the night in a haunted mansion versus haunted lighthouse. But I think, like you said, the story is just so complex to me to actually be there overnight where Sarah was, kind of getting into her headspace, I think would be really interesting. Something that's really interesting about you saying Cape Hatteras Lighthouse was your favorite location is when we were decorating our Christmas tree, we found that we have a Cape Hatteras lighthouse ornament, and we have no idea how we got it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is kind of freaky. When we put it on the tree, I was like, wait, we covered this on Haunted Atlas. Have we been here? No? how did we get it then? So it's like, that was when you said Cape Hatteras, it made me think of that story that I had not yet told you and Brandon.
Wow, a truly spooky experience there.
Yeah, I mean, feel free.
At least you're being haunted by souvenirs, right?
Right. It's like, oh, here's some decor for your house. You can feel free to edit that story out too. But I did forget to tell you guys that.
Oh, no, that's really cool.
Yeah, we were like, wait, what the heck? And then we looked it up and we were like, North Carolina, I don't think we've ever been there. So I have no idea how we got it.
Wow.
That would be such an odd specific haunting. It's like, the ghost of Cape Hatteras Lighthouse is like, you did a good job on the episode. Here's an ornament.
Happy holidays.
I gotta be honest, that was one of my favorite episodes too. I thought that was a really strong one.
Oh, really? What did you like about it?
You guys talking about how they moved it was very interesting. There was like a little engineering challenge halfway through the episode.
Yeah, that's been something I've loved about the episodes. I feel like I've actually learned so much about various things, like the lenses that you were talking about and the different locations that have been moved, and even just the state of things at the time. Like with the mines that we covered, I learned so much more about prospectors and that era of time than I knew before we started the podcast.
Erica, what's a fun fact that you learned this season?
I think my favorite fact that we talked about throughout the entire season was the haint blue roofing that shows up in Southern American homes just to kind of like keep out evil spirits, unwanted spirits. That's what in the past people have believed. And then that haint blue color has just kind of carried through modern times, which I thought was so cool.
That's awesome. That's such a cool piece of history, and it's so localized. I'll be honest, when we were talking about it on the episode, just kind of hearing you guys go through it, I was like, I've never heard of this before, and I imagine that's the experience of a lot of people. So bringing that to people's attention is also really cool.
Yes, I believe it was during the Admiral's house in South Carolina. I think that's the episode that it was on, and I remember us debating whether it was like keeping spirits in or keeping spirits out kind of thing. Like maybe it worked in both ways, which I thought was also a super cool thing to debate.
So, okay, you guys have talked about a couple of interesting things that you learned and a couple of places you would go. Are there any places that we covered this season that you would absolutely not go?
I would not go to the Yaquina Bay Lighthouse. And the reason is the story behind it, whether it is just the local legend of the newspaper story of the girl going missing, I don't want to chance it. It's such a creepy story to me. And I know that at certain points in time, at least, the lighthouse became rather run down. So there's that aspect as well. I think it'd be cool to maybe like look at it from afar, but actually going inside, I don't think I would want to do that.
Love that. And a recap of that story, ultimately, there were some friends that were at the lighthouse. One of the friends goes back in to grab something they dropped, and they are never seen again. They hear a scream, there's blood on the floor, but no friend. Did I get that right?
Yes. And they find a handkerchief, and that's all that is left of the friend.
Terrifying.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so Erica, where would you not visit?
Here's the thing. I went back through the episodes. I don't know that there's a place that I wouldn't visit at all, but I do think that I'm still too scared to stay overnight in one of the hotels in the specific haunted rooms. I think, so we talked about the Omni Parker House, the Driscoll Hotel, and the Shelburne Hotel, I believe, this season. And I think like those that had specific rooms still freak me out too much that I wouldn't be able to stay overnight in them.
That's how you feel about the ones we've covered. I know for a fact that you have slept in one haunted room in a hotel. Why don't you tell us about that?
That was the Grand Midway Hotel in Pennsylvania. And that was such an experience. So we investigated there overnight, and there are themed rooms throughout the hotel, right? So there's a Frankenstein room, there's a demon room, there is a like kind of like a dollhouse room that's called the Canopy Room. It's the most haunted. And then I stayed in the vampire room because we all know I love Twilight. So I was like, first chance I get to be connected to a vampire, that's where we're going. And we ended up doing an EVP session in there where we asked questions, trying to get a response from any spirits that may have been in the room. And at some point, Sarah and I were just in there by ourselves, and we weren't getting a ton of responses, at least while we were present there. And so at some point, Sarah had asked, "Do you want us to leave?" And it wasn't until after I stayed in the room overnight that we found out that we got an EVP after that question of a spirit possibly saying, yes, they wanted us to leave. So that was interesting. At the time, that wasn't something where we knew exactly what spirit was going to be in the room, right? Like sometimes when you talk about hotels, it's like there are specific spirits in them that have been reported. That was just such an interesting thing where, yeah, we hadn't really heard of anything specific, and then all of a sudden that showed up in the EVP.
That's so wild. It has to be a little disquieting to know that you slept in that room, having had that experience in the night without knowing it.
Yes, and I remember I made it through the night. I definitely did, but I kept waking up. It was one of those things where I felt like every time I would like lay my head down and kind of fall asleep, I would end up waking back up again. And I ended up leaving at like 5:45 in the morning. Like I left really early because I was like, I am not getting any sleep.
Hey, that works. You made it through the night, though. I think that's after sunrise.
Yes.
So I think you can put that tally mark down. Sarah, you were staying there that night too. Did you have any paranormal experiences?
I did not. I was hoping to have some sort of paranormal experience there, but nothing happened over the course of the night. During the investigation, we heard some footsteps that we thought might have been paranormal, but other than that, nothing really happened for me.
It's something you can't predict, and that's what makes it so fun to investigate. We obviously do a lot of research for this show and a lot of planning and fact-checking. Which would you say was the hardest location to research or fact-check for you guys?
For me, I think the answer has to be Cape Hatteras again. I really enjoyed researching the lens information that I had done just for background information on the episode and how Cape Hatteras had evolved. But that was something where it took me a few hours to fully understand the concepts that I was researching and then trying to get them condensed down so that I didn't have to spend a couple hours explaining it on the podcast. So that was probably the hardest thing for me.
Oh, totally. And that was the switch over from an older style of lighthouse light to a Fresnel lens that was much more focused and bright, correct?
Yes, exactly.
How about you, Sarah?
For me, I think it was Fort Jefferson because the fort has been involved in so many different wars, but the history of it isn't incredibly well documented. For those that might not be familiar, Fort Jefferson is actually off the Keys in Florida. And because of that, there might not be as much documentation as something that was more landlocked just because of transporting the documents, etc. And there were a lot of paranormal claims there that I was trying hard to verify before including on the episode. One of them is a famous photo that allegedly captures apparitions, and things like that we always try to debunk ahead of time, but that just requires some additional research to look into how those figures could have shown up in a photo without being paranormal.
Very cool. We love the idea of debunking and looking at those things and really being skeptical. That's such a great approach that you have looking into those stories, and that research is so important to bring the factual accounts to the wider listening audience here. What was the most unexpected piece of history that you uncovered in the research that you two did this season?
For me, I think the most interesting thing was the sheer number of locations that have been physically moved. I know that we mentioned Cape Hatteras was physically moved, but also the Shelburne Hotel was moved across the street. And that is just something mind-boggling to me even today. So to think about people doing it 100 years ago, that is something that was incredibly interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. An engineering marvel, especially, like you said, 100 years ago.
I think for me, it has to be when we were doing the investigation at Pythian and just getting to experience what the prisoner of war cells were and kind of what the investigation room looked like, that was not something that I had ever experienced before. And that was, not even just the paranormal element of it, which of course was super interesting and kind of why we were there, but the historical element of seeing, a painting that someone had done so many years ago and a room where so many people suffered. It was just a very interesting look into the history of the place.
And obviously that was our Halloween special this year, investigating Pythian Castle. Now, you guys were there performing that investigation. Were there any particular highlights, paranormally speaking, that you guys experienced?
For me, when we were in one of the prisoner of war cells, Erica and myself had the mic and we were recording. You were standing there, you had questions and notes and stuff, and then David was standing in the corner recording with a video camera. While we were doing that, Mitch was in another room doing his own individual session, but we heard what we thought was Mitch walking by, and multiple of us heard it, and we kind of paused because we didn't want the ambient noise on the recording, etc. And then a few minutes later, Mitch walked by, and he had not walked by before. And I think the fact that multiple of us heard the footsteps and Mitch confirmed it wasn't him, that was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah, I remember that moment being pretty startling to everyone who was there. Definitely a spooky basement.
Yes, another kind of example of the footsteps that we heard that night were in the theater upstairs. I remember that being one of the coolest moments for me because I kind of had a feeling in that room. Like it kind of felt to me like there might have been an energy there. And so when we heard those footsteps coming from behind Mitch on the right side of the theater, if you're facing the stage, I thought that was such an interesting thing to experience in a room that I had already felt kind of energy there.
So you guys have been to a number of different haunted locations. You've talked about 26 different locations on the podcast. How would you say your understanding of the paranormal evolved throughout the season?
So for me, it's really interesting. Actually, I know we make jokes kind of about me being the most scared one, which I think is still true. But before we started all of this, I think maybe that's kind of how I would describe the paranormal, is just scary, right? Like it was so unfamiliar to me. And I think now that we've done these investigations and we've talked about these places, to me, it's like I have a deeper understanding of the fact that a lot of paranormal energy is just human beings that existed, that went through the same things that we go through. And it's just it's a deeper look into what being a spirit actually is, or like what kind of experiencing a haunting means. That's not like a scary thing. That's like a really cool way for a spirit trying to connect with you. So I think that was honestly, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life, to be honest, like getting to switch my view and not being so scared of it anymore.
Such a thoughtful answer, Erica. Thank you.
And now
Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say, and now I get to follow that up. No. I mean, mine is similar, perhaps less philosophical, but it's breaking down the binaries of hauntings. I think so many times people think that things are black and white. Is it an intelligent haunting or is it not? But it doesn't have to be that black or white. Things can be specific to the haunting and they can be variable. And I think another thing is continuing to learn that a lot of the things that you might see when researching, like, oh, it's a poltergeist, oh, it's a demon, you really have to look into what that means. What are they trying to say when they say poltergeist? Do they just mean that it's an active ghost, that there's physicality to it? Or do they just mean that it's scary because they've seen the movie Poltergeist and think all hauntings are poltergeists? So I think removing some of the black and white lines for the hauntings has been something that I've really enjoyed this season.
One of the other questions that I have written down here that I think really curtails off that nicely is there a story from one of these locations that you covered that lingers with you? Like, do you still think about it every once in a while after recording the episode? Or do you zip those case files up, put them in the filing cabinet and let them stay there? I
have always really enjoyed the stories that are at Oosterhout Library. especially the one about the man who sits by himself and reads a newspaper in the midst of everybody else kind of being there and going about their day. Because I think that to me would be such a cool afterlife, getting to just sit around, read things, and kind of like keep to myself. And I think sometimes I think about him because I'm like, I wonder what he's doing there and what time period he's from. And if I was in that time period, would we have connected if I went to this particular library? So I think it's a very fun thing for me to think about because he seems very similar. His ideals to mine are like pretty similar.
Love that. You could have a little ghost friend.
Yes, exactly.
How about you, Sarah?
Mine is similarly like a positive ghost experience. It is the tour guide from the USS Lexington, because I think about the fact that this ghost routinely is interacting with tourists, is providing information, etc. But some people don't realize that it's a ghost. And I just think the concept of this spirit, even in their afterlife, is so passionate that they're continuing to, spread information, always noted as being incredibly cheery. I think that's really cool. And it's also interesting to me that people routinely interact with them, but do not know that it's a ghost. Because I wonder if I myself would be able to note that it's a ghost. I like to think that I would because I'm a paranormal investigator, but I have no way of knowing.
Love that. We love to see a cheery ghost joining the workforce. I think everybody has the same question on their mind. Will there be a season 2 of Haunted Atlas?
Yes, we are so excited to announce that season 2 of the Haunted Atlas will be releasing on January 6th of 2026, and I truly cannot wait to dive into this next season.
Me either. I feel like we're just going to cover so many cool places. There's more opportunities for investigation. It's just going to be such a fun thing and a great way to start the new year, to be honest.
And what I love about season 2 is that we're doing only locations that have already been covered on hauntedus.com, because that way we'll have the pictures that we can look at and reference in real time. If people listen and they want more information or to go see it themselves, they can visit the website. So I think that will just add another really interesting layer to the episode where people can engage with it multiple ways.
Absolutely love that. Are there any big changes that are coming for season 2?
Oh, yes. I will be starting to research the history and getting to do those sections. I'm super excited about that update.
That's awesome. It's cool that your flair for the historical is going to show so much more in those episodes. What would you say was the most rewarding part of creating Haunted Atlas this year?
The most rewarding part for me, I think, was the recording sessions. I really enjoy being with you guys and getting to hang out and do all this fun stuff while we're recording, catch-ups. I like the Haunted US meetings are always great because we get to see everybody. So for me, it's really like the connections that I've made through the podcast.
And I will tell you, it is such a joy to be on those recording session meetings and those Haunted US meetings. It's absolutely fantastic. We have a killer team. How about you, Sarah?
For me, it's that you really involved us start to finish through this process, which has made it rewarding to see it start literally from us sitting down and picking out the logo, which you had us all vote on, which I think was a great way to decide it, to testing mics, setups, etc., recording in multiple different locations to try to get the best sound, continuing to iterate and improve. To me, that's been the most rewarding, watching it grow from, is this a good logo? This is the mic we're going to use, to, wow, we have 26 episodes out.
It's been awesome to just watch it grow and blossom and see you guys really get into your comfort zone and really start investigating through the episodes that we're creating. It's such a cool experience. So season 2 is coming up. What is a place that you really want to make sure that you cover next season?
For me, I am so excited to cover Biltmore Estates because I've heard so many stories about it. I've heard that it's beautiful, the history is incredible, and that it's one of the most haunted places in America. But I really don't know much about it other than it's this large estate that is beautiful and haunted, like I said. So I'm excited to dig into it more because I feel like it's rare that there's such a well-known haunted location that I know pretty much nothing about.
How about you, Erica?
For me, I think I would be super excited to talk about the Molly Brown house in Denver, Colorado. I was so obsessed with learning about the Titanic when I was a kid. I had this like little Titanic pop-up book that you could flip through with like information. And I just think she has been a figure, like a historical figure in my head for so long. I think it would be really, really cool to get to talk about her space.
If someone were just discovering Haunted Atlas, you could choose which episode they listen to first. Where would you have them start?
I would have them listen to Pythian Castle. I know that's something that we brought up a lot today, but genuinely, I think that would be a really good episode to start with, because not only would someone get to hear about how we talk about the history and how we talk about the hauntings, but also how we investigate, which I think when you're choosing a paranormal podcast to listen to, I think it is important that, you know, you kind of align with the way that they do things. And that episode really encapsulates our entire vibe and how we run things.
Sarah, what about you?
Well, since I can't say Pythian, I'm going to say the Driscoll Hotel. I think that was a really, really interesting episode. Everything from the history, notable American presidents that had been staying at the hotel. That aspect is interesting, but the hauntings are so, so interesting, even down to a haunted painting. And that was still earlier on in the season where it might have been a little grittier, less polished, but I think that's a good place to start because, one, I love the episode, but two, if you get into Haunted Atlas, you can kind of see how we evolve because you've started with such an early episode.
Well, I just want to say, guys, thank you so much. I have seen how much effort you have put into this season. I know you guys are working so hard to research these locations, and you have a different view of hauntings than I think I've ever seen, and I think it is a very interesting view. So thank you so much for putting this season together, and I personally am really looking forward to season 2.
It has been so much fun to do and work with such a wonderful group. And also thank you to the listeners for tuning in every single week. We are so excited to continue growing the podcast and putting out more content.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much to the listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. And again, thank you, Brandon, for all of the support that you've given us this season. I feel like you have really, like, producing the episodes and supporting us like you have has kind of made the podcast as good as it is.
You guys are way too sweet. I feel bad. Now I feel like I'm inserting myself into this episode so that you guys can thank me publicly. Yeah, David's doing some bowing.
That's funny.
It has been absolutely wonderful talking to you guys. I hope it's not been too awkward being interviewed instead of presenting a story. But again, a hearty thank you to all the listeners out there who make this show possible, who keep downloading episodes and exploring the haunted US with us. You guys are fantastic. If you have a favorite episode of the Haunted Atlas Season 1, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at theteam@hauntedus.com and include Haunted Atlas Season 1 in the subject line, or share it to us on Instagram at Haunted Atlas. Tune into our next episode to see where we drop the pin on our adventure across the haunted US.
This episode of The Haunted Atlas was presented by Sarah Sweeney, Erica Barrett, and Brandon Rugsey, with production assistance by David Sweeney and music by Colleen Johnson. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com for more information.